Hi again, this is Lee Solden. I'm continuing what I started earlier today. Um, Topic is ear tuning exercises, a way to quite quickly get your ear tuned into a new language. Okay, now where I left off was Hindi. Okay, Hindi was the next language up in my list. I thought I could learn how to read. I knew like 800 Hindi words at the time. I thought I could get my number of words up where I could actually read it, and that I could try to ear tune to it. Because the first six languages I either could read or they were just simply came as a bonus by tuning into a similar language. So, but one day after that, after thinking that I needed to learn more Hindi words, I had an insight. Oh, wait a second. The whole Korean audiobook sounds clear to me, not just the words that I knew. So it doesn't really matter whether I know a word or not. The ear tuning works for all of them. So, okay, I talked to my Hindi partner, Hindi language partner, and he knows how to write English equivalent for Hindi. That's used a lot, especially on phones. And he's very phonetic about it. Okay, he doesn't write things a lot of times like it says in the dictionary. He writes it like he hears it, and he's not strictly a Hindi speaker, mind you, but he writes when he speaks Hindi too, and when he writes it phonetically. So I asked him, well, okay, I don't know what this means here, this in this audiobook I'm listening to, but could you please just dictate to me in your English letters what the guy's saying, and I'm going to use that to try to tune my ear in with, and not knowing if it would work or not. Well, I did everything the same as for any of the first six languages. I listened to a whole lot of Hindi, that particular audiobook. I did a couple of hours of ear tuning exercises every day. The guy only wrote out 30 seconds of speech for me. I remember with the Spanish, I'd had a whole half hour. Okay. He only wrote out for me 30 seconds worth of syllables. So it's all I had. Okay. So I'd repeat those over and over again, reading them while I'm listening to that stretch in the audiobook. And then for like 5 minutes, I'd play the same 30 seconds over and over again while I was just listening to it. It took 9 days, but my ear began all of a sudden to hear the Hindi as concrete words rather than a kind of a buzz. Bzz, bzz, went from bzz, 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 hey, hi, Kesa, hey, how are you doing? Okay. It came, I can, but mind you, this is from an audiobook from which I did not know any words. I did not understand anything of that 30 seconds. By gosh, I could hear them as distinct words. And later on, I went on to learn what those words meant. So this time, once I realized that you didn't have to even know the words, I realized I could get anybody, any language that I know. I can write ear tuning syllables if I can hear it perfectly, mind you. And the next guy can quickly get right to where I am. Now, remember, I spent many, many, many years studying German, reading German. Uh, Never got anywhere hearing stuff on TV or on audiobook. A few days later, after ear tuning, I was hearing stuff on the audiobook pretty well. TV took a little longer, the broken dialogue, a lot of noise issues in the background. But anyway, I did more in a few days getting my ear good for German. I had the previous so many years, starting when I was 9 years old. My dad was teaching me German. Okay. I think he was teaching me German, by the way, because I had a speech impediment and he was trying to get me over that by teaching me a foreign language. And he concentrated on, guess what? Exactly how to say each thing. So he was kind of forcing me to learn how to talk, really, back then. I didn't realize it at the time, but anyway. So I quit going to speech classes, and sure enough, it straightened me out. By the way, I was able to talk pretty well after that. Okay, so from Hindi, I started uh, doing ear tuning to Arabic and Mandarin Chinese, all at full speed speech. There's a lot of issues to talk about in ear tuning. That's why I'm going to do another uh, lecture specifically on ear tuning to Mandarin tomorrow. Okay, it's the most complex one, so I'll give you an idea of some of the difficulty. It's not difficult to learn for a student. It's difficult to set up for a teacher to set up learning for the student. The student does not have a problem. My problem with Mandarin is that I am both the teacher and the student. Okay. I don't have anybody, since this system just got invented by me, there's nobody else that has all this stuff there for me to learn from. I wish they did. I wish someone had invented this stuff 50 years ago, and that for any language, for anybody, regardless of what your native language is, these systems would be set up for you to learn whatever language you wanted. So if I want to teach you Mandarin and you're an English speaker, I got to start somewhere, and it's probably going to be with English. Uh, I have used other languages to teach people, but usually people are learning English anyway. So I try to teach in that because that helps them learn it by me teaching them in English. And at the same time, it means that whatever I do is applicable to students behind the first student. So if I write a bunch of notes about what something means in English, then anybody who knows English, and that's a pretty universal language compared to many, can just simply get my notes and learn the language of Korean, for instance. Um, okay, so keep going back to ear tuning here. So what is ear tuning? Ear tuning has two parts to it. Doing ear tuning exercises, that is following these ear tuning syllables. At the same time, during the day in between the ear tuning exercises, you're doing the passive listening. It all goes together. Those two things, you do those two activities, passive listening plus the ear tuning exercises. In most cases, the ear will tune in 2 days. French took 4, Hindi took 9. Nothing else really took more than 2. Now, Russian is an exception. I'll talk about that later. So a lot of times I can just give a person the instructions, okay, and I can give them the ear tuning syllables. They already have the audiobook because they've been listening to that audiobook for the passive listening. The instructions say, okay, here's the ear tuning syllables, here's the key below. So if you see an EE, that's E. If you see an O, that's O. And I'll say that's the O as in boat, for instance, or maybe if I say I'll use an A, I say that is the A as in father. So there'll be a pronunciation key for my ear tuning syllables, and I tell them, well, okay, now I'm about to tell you how to do these, but remember, you're not supposed to be able to do them. You're not supposed to be able to because your ear's not tuned into Spanish. So how could you possibly do what I'm about to tell you? However, you're supposed to try it. And after trying it for 2 days, invariably, every time, the person's ear tunes into Spanish. And that beats 10 years of passive listening to it. That couple of days of doing the ear tuning, the 2 hours actually, because you're only doing an hour per day. So 2 hours of ear tuning to Spanish upon you've been surrounding yourself with it for 21 hours. Now you start the ear tuning, and at the same time, you continue surrounding yourself with Spanish. And 2 days later, boom, you're tuned in. Compared to struggling with it for years and years, no, don't do that. Learn how to hear Spanish correctly from me. Or any other language I teach. Even if I don't teach it, I might be able to help you. Okay, if it's something close to German or close to Russian, maybe I can write ear tuning syllables for you. I've written ear tuning syllables for Lithuanian, which I was not studying, though I'm kind of going to slowly learn it now. Same with Japanese. I've written ear tuning syllables. I've written ear tuning syllables for Irish English, um, Hebrew. Can't think of anything else right now. Okay, so if I can hear it correctly, I can probably write ear tuning syllables for it. If I can't, what if maybe they're not very good because it's not close enough of a language? Well, then I do this loop where I do some ear tuning so my ear gets better for it. I rewrite the ear tuning syllables and then do more ear tuning, et cetera, et cetera. Eventually, when the ear tuning syllables stabilize, I know I've gotten there. Now I've written a decent set of ear tuning syllables. So, however good my ear tuning syllables are, when I give them to somebody, their ear can go just as good as my ear by those ear tuning syllables. And if they're not perfect, well, between the two of us, we can keep rewriting them and redoing them. But if the world was ideal, all such ear tuning syllables would have been written going from any one language to any other language. Okay, so what if a person's blind? Okay, uh, then you can't give them the ear tuning syllables, but well, they can get it in Braille. And they'll tell you, well, you can't read the Braille very fast. Well, that's okay, because guess what? Remember this, nobody can actually do the exercises. Nobody can follow Spanish syllable by syllable exactly as it's being spoken if the ear's not tuned to it. It's the attempt that will tune your ear into it. But if a person can't see very well, can't read because their vision's too poor to read anything, there's another way to go about it. I tell them, okay, listen to these syllables, and okay, listen for just the syllable noon. Okay, so they listen and they can't really make out a whole lot, but they hear that one syllable noon. Okay, listen to the syllable after it, ace. So now I got noon ace, or I'm just making stuff up here, mind you. Okay, and then okay, listen for this next syllable after that, and they listen for that. Oh, okay, and those be a few syllables at the end of one of the lines. And then I'll skip to the end of the next line, and I'll get them familiar with what the syllables are at the end of the next line, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now we're talking about 70, 80 ear tuning syllables covering maybe 20 seconds of speech, maybe. And the person, even they can't read what's in front of them, still is familiar somewhat with those ear tuning syllables. And if they listen to them and get lost, they got a point they can pick back up. So they have a guide point. So a way station, I think as they call it. If you got a GPS, you make way stations, right? So they get lost. Now theoretically, I could talk that person through the whole ear tuning process. I tell them, listen for this, listen for that, listen for that, until they got familiar with exactly what was the content of every one of the 70 syllables. Okay, and it takes a long time. My preference is that I just give someone the ear tuning syllables, they try it, and a whole lot of people just get it by my instructions. Okay, but there's other ways around it. If you have vision impairment, you can still learn a language. My system is almost at least 95% ear-based for anybody. It's all about passive listening. Half the time you do read-throughs, you have your eyes closed. Half the time when you do ear tuning, you have your eyes closed. If you can't see very well, you go more and more toward the eyes closed part and less toward the reading part. That's okay. You'll still learn the language either way. Let's see here. So I think I've covered a lot on ear tuning. In most cases, you're going to do a half hour of ear tuning in the morning, the first day that you're going to do ear tuning, a half hour that day, first thing when you wake up. You're going to listen to that target language for several hours, the very same audiobook that the ear tuning syllables are coming from. And at night before you go to bed, another half hour of doing ear tuning exercises. And I'd like a person to keep that up for like about a week, and then they can start slacking off because they're hearing the language pretty good. But I still want them to do some ear tuning exercises, maybe 15 minutes a day for a while. Eventually, down to a year later, still do 5 minutes a day, twice a week, even. Okay. So you always want to keep getting your ear better and better for the language. Um, okay, what if you're learning two languages? Well, I tell people, you want to learn two languages? That's okay. But I would like you to today start listening to the audiobook for one of the languages a lot, and the other one just a little. Get a little start on it. Then you get 21 hours in the first language. You do ear tuning to it, and then I'm gonna have to start doing read throughs. Start getting well grounded in the first language. Meanwhile, you've been slowly listening passively to the second language, and so then, okay, let's do ear tuning for that second language. You got your 21 hours accumulated there. You do the ear tuning there. Now you're listening to the language, but you're concentrating on the first one. But yet, I'll give you some amount of read throughs to do. So I'm gonna give you some definitions for like 3 minutes worth of the second language. So you have some read throughs to do. You can be doing your ear tuning for the second language, doing your passive listening for the second language. So you're slowly starting to absorb the second one, but all your main focus is on the first one. That's what I try to get people to do. Some people will learn several languages at once. They're crazy as me, in other words. Okay, but even I don't. I concentrate in one language at a time. Okay, get into the subject of Russian. For Russian, because I had tuned in to several contributing languages to it, Arabic, Dutch, German, French, Italian, probably missing one. But anyway, several languages I had already tuned into. I went to tune into the Russian. I listened to it for 15 minutes passively, and bam, it kind of tuned in. Not all the way, but it did become distinct words. A little bit of fuzz in there, but still distinct words. Okay. Now, I started doing a whole lot of read throughs for Russian. In fact, I did not really do any studying from the end of March of 2019 to November 1 of 2019. I really didn't, okay? I concentrated on two languages, Arabic and Hindi. But what I was concentrating on is getting my ear better for them. And I didn't really know what I was doing. This ear tuning thing is all new to me. There were no ear tuning syllables for Arabic, or nor any ear tuning syllables um, for the Hindi. And so what I was doing is I had somewhat of an ear for them, but it needed to get better. And I started doing read throughs for Arabic and read throughs for Russian. Hope and some ear tuning exercises with my imprecise ear tuning syllables, trying and hoping that this would cause me to eventually have a better ear for these languages. Well, it didn't really work. Okay. And why was I even trying it? It wasn't me. I could have at any time tried to redo my ear tuning syllables. I was trying to find out during those several months if I could tell a person, hey, you've done your certain amount of ear tuning. Okay, now you can stop that because the rest of it will be done by ear tuning in from doing the read throughs. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You read and read and read, but see, reading is about comprehending what is being said. Okay, whereas ear tuning syllables is forgetting about the definition and listening very, very carefully to the sounds. Without that continued careful listening, you just don't get your ear better. Now, there's more than one way to do ear tuning besides my ear tuning syllables. I'll get to that in a bit. But my ear tuning syllables is a darn good start. You can get a pretty good ear for a language with my ear tuning syllables, which I give to anybody who wants. By the way, there's no charge anywhere. There's no hidden charges. People think, oh, he's going to do this step for free and then make me no, then charge me for that. No, there's just 3 steps. I tell everybody what the 3 steps are. I'll give anybody that wants it a copy of my whole system, all the ear tuning syllables, everything they need if they want it. Although I found that if I give a person everything, it can be very overwhelming. Like if I give you all the various rules for pronunciation of Korean and uh, say, oh, here's all the definitions. Okay, no, a lot of times it can overwhelm somebody. It's better to give them, start them with ear tuning. I mean, start with passive listening, then do the ear tuning, and then one sentence at a time, explain how that first sentence goes, and you keep going from there, one sentence at a time in the story, okay? This doesn't scare people off as much. You don't want to overload people with information. Um, and back to the subject of ear tuning. So what did I do with Russian finally? After proving to myself beyond a shadow of a doubt that my ear was not going to get better just by doing read-throughs, I began doing that cycle I mentioned earlier in a previous video. I mentioned it, that I started doing a loop where I would play the Russian and dictate it best I could based on my current ear, use those ear tuning syllables for 3 days, a lot of passive listening, then 3 days later, write another set of ear tuning syllables with a slightly improved ear. Each time my ear tuning syllables are better, they're better at getting my ear toward what I should be hearing. So maybe 8 or 12 times, quite a few times of this loop of writing ear tuning syllables, then writing more, and you keep throwing out the old ones and writing the new ones. Um, and eventually, my ear got pretty darn good for Russian, and I started sharing those ear tuning syllables for Russian with other people. Now, let's talk about Italian. Same thing. Italian, I kept getting a better and better ear for Italian by doing more and more ear tuning for Spanish. Okay, because it's a related accent. But I didn't get really good at hearing Italian until I wrote ear tuning syllables for Italian and started using them. And again, went through that cycle of writing, using them a few days, rewriting, using them. And I got it down to where they stabilized. So now I think Italian is one of the most, for my ear, the easiest one to pick up. Although German and Spanish right now are also very close. French is definitely behind those 3. Okay. Um, Now I've done as much work on the French as anything, probably on rewriting and trying to improve my ear tuning syllables for French. But for some reason, I think it's because that I'm tuning into all of Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese, and they're all related. So in all, I'm doing a whole lot of into that. That's why the Italian and Spanish seem so sharp to me. And German is, I think, just because, well, I'm also tuning into Dutch again, so I got a companion language there where I'm listening to a whole lot of Dutch and a whole lot of German, doing ear tuning for both. So back to Italian. Italian, for a long time, I just depended on the ear tuning for Spanish. Same thing with Portuguese. I for a long time, I depended on my ear was getting a little better, a little better, a little better, doing read throughs for Portuguese, continuing ear tuning for Spanish. But then I switched and wrote the ear tuning syllables directly for Portuguese. Okay, Dutch, same story. Initially, I'm learning Dutch by just listening to Dutch, not writing ear tuning syllables for it directly, depending on additional ear tuning for German. But after a while, I took the time, wrote the ear tuning syllables in Dutch, used them, rewrote them, used them, that same cycle. Write, it's called dictation, when you dictate the best you can what you're hearing. Then you use it for the ear tuning, okay? And for anyone just tuning in, ear tuning, all that means ear tuning exercises to be exact. Ear tuning exercises is having a representation of what you're hearing in a known language. Usually that means for me, I wrote the ear tuning syllable in English. If you're trying to learn Spanish and you are an English speaker or you know English, you're going to have ear tuning syllables in English, letters that tell you exactly what you're hearing syllable by syllable. And if there's a stress on a syllable in Spanish, I put an exclamation mark after that syllable. Pretty simple, right? Um, and I used to do this when I first started having a person doing ear tuning to Spanish. I would simplify them a little bit. You guys don't know about the nuestra versus nuestra, okay? I'd simplify it, but then I quit doing that. I go right to. I realize that people can go right, even though they're a little more complicated. They're still use them just fine with the exact pronunciation of the Spanish. Okay, let me see here. So by this time, uh, the original ear tuning syllables I wrote were in Spanish. Um, for other people to learn Spanish with. Just because I could read Spanish did not mean that the next guy could read Spanish. So I started writing ear tuning syllables for Spanish, and of course now I'm using those my own ear tuning syllables. It helped me a little bit with my Spanish, even though I thought I was pretty good. So I tell people, no matter how good you think your ear is for a language, try my ear tuning syllables. Try doing the ear tuning exercises because you might get a better ear. If not, it can't harm you. Can't harm you to listen very carefully and see what you're hearing and see if that matches my ear tuning syllables. Hey, maybe you'll find a mistake in one of my ear tuning syllables and correct me on it. Okay. There's like a syllable, at least one or two here and there that I'm not absolutely sure about in my Russian ear tuning syllables, for instance. And part of that has to do with, people have their own accents. So maybe this guy could, anyway, we don't know exactly. But so if I give you ear tuning syllables in Russian, what can I tell you about those ear tuning syllables? I tell you that this is going to let you hear Russian pretty darn good, really fast. Is it perfect? I don't know. I'm not a Russian native speaker. I'm telling you something. I've had people use them and had no problem with Russian any further. Okay. And same with any of the languages. I know these ear tuning syllables work, and they've never not worked for anybody. And it's very, very quick. And again, Mandarin's not so quick. Hindi takes a little longer too. Mandarin, I'm going to cover tomorrow, the whole system for the ear tuning. Let me see here. I'm about talked out for the day. There's a couple things I didn't cover, but stuff about specific things to specific languages. You see here. Okay, there's one topic I wanted to get. I got a little more time yet. I got cut off for a while earlier, so haven't quite done a whole hour yet. That's my target to get 1 hour of video in today. Um, Once you get to the point where you can follow a person's voice perfectly in a language exactly as they're reading, well, then I start challenging a person to try to read faster and get ahead. In other words, you start right with the guy. And I tell you, hey, start reading faster and faster. See if you can get a whole paragraph ahead of this guy. And I'm trying to build your reading speed up. And I don't really care about the reading speed so much. What I care about is this. I want you to be able to, you're reading along, following the guy's voice, and then as needed, and you're going to know when it's needed, there'll be something you're not quite sure what the guy's saying, how it sounds. If you can read a little bit ahead and then listen exactly how the guy says that particular syllable, that is also part of ear tuning, okay? So as I was saying, there's more than one way to do ear tuning, and I have seen people. I've heard of different methods of ear tuning. Okay, so my method is not the only method of ear tuning. My method is not the only method out there that takes a story and has a person learn it all in the same story. There is absolutely nothing completely unique as a component by component basis that does not exist anywhere in the language teaching world. The unique thing about my system, in my opinion, is that it is put all together, and it was put all together by trial and error, finding what works and what does not work, not by me ever studying theory and going by that. My system came by trial and error, finding what works. And I think I came up with a system that, time wise, if you don't have any time to learn a language, then I'm the guy for you. Because, first of all, passive listening does not take any of your time. You're supposed to completely ignore it, go about your day. Ear tuning. Ear tuning exercises. Initially, it's an hour a day, but you know what? I've had students, they do 10 minutes a day, and that's all they ever do. But you keep doing the 10 minutes a day for like a whole year, they never ever did an hour of ear tuning exercises in one day. Still works. Okay. I want people to do a good hour a day of read throughs, and some people can only do 10, 15, 20 minutes. They still learn the language. Okay. But it doesn't take you very much time, and you can learn multiple languages like this. And you can decide what you're going to do the most read throughs for, where you're going to put the most passive listening to, um, and what you can do the most ear tuning for, uh, the order of languages that you learned. And I'll mention something about that before I let you go. I like to start. If a person wants to learn a lot of languages, including all the four um, Latin languages, the four big ones, anyway, Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese to be exact for me, Italian, Spanish, and French. I have them learn them in this order. And it has to do with ear tuning and other things. I start out with Brazilian Portuguese. It's kind of tough to learn, but it covers a whole lot of sounds. And once you know Brazilian Portuguese by ear, in my opinion, it's not that hard to get you to understanding Spanish by ear nor Italian by ear. And then once you've learned all of Brazilian Portuguese, Spanish, and Italian, now you have all kinds of verbs you know from those three languages. Now I have you go to French, which does not share the same accent, but now you're going into French with a whole lot of knowledge about Latin languages, and verb after verb, you'll find there's a parallel in one of the other three. So it's a lot less memorization and whatnot. Not to have people study anyway. And again, the order that you learn languages, considering that there's no difficulty level to any of them, is not that important. But yet there is obviously some value in piggybacking uh, Spanish on the Brazilian Portuguese, and then piggybacking Italian onto those two, and then going to French, uh, because there's just less stuff that your mind has to absorb altogether. Okay, I'm gonna try to do another of these tomorrow, same time, 5 o'clock Eastern time. If I get cut off like I have the last couple of days, I'm gonna go right back in and try to get a whole hour's worth of video. So again, 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, which is Monday. The topic is going to be ear tuning, specifically to Mandarin Chinese, and how I start a person with doing ear tuning to the ear tuning exercises directly to the Mandarin tone marks before any other step. And I'll preview that a little bit. It's going to go like this. First, you ear tune to the marks, and I use a number 5 for tone 5. I use 3B for 3 bouncy if the tone 3 comes at the end of a sentence, for instance. but otherwise, okay, see, I use the little Shift 6, so an upside down arrow for the tone mark for a 3, by the way, which is a good thing, which you'll see. Anyway, so first thing is they just listen for the tones, the rising, falling pitches of the Mandarin as being spoken, and they're following that by ear. At the same time, they're reading the tone marks. Then they close their eyes and just listen. Okay, just like any other ear tuning, but they're only paying attention to the pitch, up and down pitch, or is it a high, low, medium? Okay. So what is the pitch? Okay, but then they keep doing more ear tuning exercises to the pitch by introducing them to my ear tuning syllables, which they will later learn the rest of the content of the syllable. But my ear tuning syllable, it simply has like number 2 in front of it. To man, okay, means you're going to say the syllable man with the rising tone. Ma, okay. I won't overdo it so people don't know what I'm doing. Never heard of Mandarin. You can hear it, ma. Start out with the regular in the middle, ma, go up. I'm exaggerating it just for people who don't know what a Mandarin tone is. All a Mandarin tone is it's describing where your pitch starts and where it ends. So tone 2 is like starts in the middle of your voice range and goes up to the top, for instance. Okay. So I give them the actual ear tuning syllables next, but they're still only worried about that number in front of the, I got numbers 1 through 5. So the tone marks aren't there anymore, but yet they're going back and forth between the ear tuning exercises by tone marks to ear tuning exercises by my ear tuning syllables, which has the numbers in front of them. They're going back and forth, so they're going to know that a 1 is up the top of the voice range, okay? Because they're going to see, they're going to know that little flat line is a 1. And now, third thing I have them do is I put the pinyin in front of them, and they're still doing the ear tuning just to the tones from the pinyin. Now here, you got to start teaching them some rules. You got to start teaching them that you can't say 2 tone 3s in a row unless there's a pause. Okay, so the first one has to become a tone 2. Okay, so tone 3 is low. Mm, mm. Okay, but you can't say mm, mm. You gotta say mm, mm. You make the first one of the pair tone 2, which is a rising tone, and the second one is a tone 3 on down the bottom, unless it's the last syllable of the sentence or just before a comma, in which case it would be a 3 bouncy tone. Anyway, so you got to start learning some tone rules, some grammar about the tones. There's only a handful of them really, but first thing I'm going to teach them is that one rule, and I also got to teach them another rule that always comes up, you can't avoid, is the fact that a tone 3 goes to a tone 3B if it comes to the end of the sentence. So that I can't avoid, but the rest of them I can wait till later. Okay, don't want to confuse a new student too much. So they're still only worried about the pitch. Okay, step 4. Now you put the Mandarin symbols in front of them, but they're still only worried about one thing. What is the pitch they're hearing when they see that symbol? So I want them, before they know anything else, to know the pitch that goes to the syllable. And regardless whether they see it as pinyin, as my ear tuning syllable, or as the symbol itself, or just a tone mark, it doesn't matter. They know what tones associated with it. Okay. Now the next step after they're very well tuned into these Mandarin tones. Now you start teaching them the rest of the syllable, and you do same pattern. Okay. Now, of course, you don't do the tone marks. It does not apply. But now you say that san is san, san is san. Okay. Well, this is a case where there's no difference between the English spelling of the pinyin and the the spelling in the pinyin. I mean, the pinyin uses English letters. Okay. And sometimes there is no difference between the English spelling and the spelling used in the pinyin, but sometimes there is. So my ear tuning syllables are going to be the first thing that they tune their ear to. But remember, my ear tuning syllables also have those numbers in front of them for the tone. So now they're doing them together. They're doing the tone along with the rest of the syllable. They've been introduced to the ear tuning syllables prior, but they've been told to ignore the rest of it. But I'm sure they're not completely ignoring it. I'm sure their mind's picking a lot of it up. But okay, they're ignoring it best they can and just concentrating on what pitch they're hearing, right? So now their ear is not tuned in to the language already just by tuning into the ear tuning syllables. Next thing I have them do is tune in to those same syllables